Hello, BookTube, and this is an announcement for Horror Mayhem. Yes, another event for May. And this time, we did fantasy for February fantasy stories, and the previous November we did New Worlds November for science fiction stories. And they are short form novels, 250 pages or less, or novellas and novelettes, and but primarily short stories. And each week is broken down into themes. And this time we again have four themes. The first week is supernatural creatures, uh, or supernatural beings slash creatures. So that includes, yeah, anything that's supernatural, like that's, vampires, uh, werewolves, you name it. And creatures can be, zombies, cryptozoology if you want to. You name it. Any of these things that are monsters that are in the horror type genre. So it's very big. There's a lot there. And I'll get to what I've sort of decided on reading at the moment. And things will be augmented, I'm sure, as time uh, grows closer. Now, the second week, I keep after looking here. Second week uh, is is Gothic Horror. So that can be anywhere from, old world Gothic, Southern Gothic, New England Gothic, anything that's Gothic and horror. And then folk horror is the third, and cosmic horror, which is is kind of it's sort of based on sort of H.P. Lovecraft type stuff, or science fiction horror, and that type of thing. So there is also an overlap of things, like even with folk horror and gothic horror uh, can be combined, because it's either, the environment that is the problem and that's causing the horror, or it's sort of, folk stories or folk tales. So even potentially, vampires could be part of that, or supernatural beings. So there is, and then, Gothic can be some of the supernatural beings as well. So I've decided, like, definitely week one is well fleshed out for me. Now, the major thing that I will be doing is mummies, and this is a British Library publication. It's called Lost in a Pyramid and Other Classic Mummy Stories, and it is selected by Andrew Smith. And this came out in 2016, edited by Andrew Smith as well. So it's got quite a few. It goes right back to 1869, I think, right up to 1910. Louisa May Alcott, um, Baron Shippenback, Grant Allen, Justin Huntley, McCarthy, sorry, even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Julian Hawthorne, and it just goes on. Sax Rohmer, as we get into the 20th century. And I used to read a lot of mummy stories, not particularly short, short stories, but novels. When I was in university, I'd be going to book sales, and I used to find these old late Victorian, early 20th century Edwardian novels that were about mummies, and I used to gobble them up. But I didn't find that many, but I'd find enough that kept me interested in it. And then also too, what I want to read is this is Bram Stoker's The Jewel of Seven Stars. It is part of the Desert Island Dracula library. This is a paperback reprint of that, and it's introduced, annotated, and edited by Clive Leatherdale, who did the Desert Island books. It's a whole sort of line. There was a Dracula series that was done there, and they're all really good books, but hard to locate now. And this is a complete and unabridged and annotated. There's tons of footnotes, and there's introductions, and it's under 250 pages. The text here is like 248, and that's with all the extras on it. And then, just for good measure, I have this year. It's a Wordsworth classic. It's Return from the Bed, selected and introduced by David Stewart Davies. Most of the material that's in here, it's got the Jewel of the Seven Stars in here, but it has the actually really first big mummy story. It's called just The Mummy by Jane Webb, and it also has Edgar Allan Poe's Some Words with a Mummy, which is fabulous, and 2 Arthur Conan Doyle stories. And I think only one of these is in the British Library one, so that's fabulous. Now, let me see if I can find, I've got, here it is. Sorry, I should have thought I had these all sorted, but I clearly did not. And to continue on, I'm going to see how much I can read for creatures, but I'm going to try to keep that week free and just delve right into it. And I've got a couple here on vampires. This is Christopher Frayling's Lord Byron to Count Dracula, and it's essays and some original short stories. This is a favorite favor, so it's brown, the paper. This I got to next to nothing, and I'd love to have a better copy of it. This was published in 1978, I think, originally. But it has, as I say, short stories as well as essays. So it's got John Polidori's The Vampire, fragment of a story by Lord Byron, Alexander Dumas, A Visit to the Theatre, and Varney, a selection from Varney the Vampire, by James Malcolm Rymer. That's a massive 19th century penny dreadful vampire story that's well over 1,000 pages long. And then there's essays here, Creature of Folklore, The Genesis of Dracula, and bits of Count Dracula and Dracula's Guest and so forth in there. So let me get this out of the way. The one that's sort of the good one on this is the Penguin Book of Vampire Stories, edited by Alan Ryan. This is a book club edition of the Book Club Association edition, but it's a nice little hardcover, and it's a long collection. There's a lot in here, but there's overlap because it's got The Vampire by John Polidori, and it's got a selection from Varney the Vampire, or A Feast of Blood. It's an excerpt from 1845. And it's got Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu, and just goes on. There are many stories and fragments that are listed there. So that's definitely, I'll be reading some vampire stories as well. Not only just mummy, vampire stories. And then we move on to Silver Bullets. And this is classic werewolf stories. Werewolf? Bad joke from a movie. This is selected by Eleanor Dobson. And this goes right back. This is British Library again. The whole month is going to be seeped with British Library publications, which there are a lot of stuff that applies to this reading event. So we started out in 1831, The Man Wolf by Leech Ritchie. We've even got The Werewolf by Hans Christian Andersen. And then more in the 1800s. And then we've got even a story by Saki, H. Munro. I think that's correct, yeah. And 1950, 1920, Running Wolf by Algernon Blackwood is the latest one. It's got an introduction, so this I'm hoping to read in completion as well as the Mummy, the British Library Mummy one. Now, I also want to do Ghosts, so we're not finished yet for the first week. Another British Library edition, and it's a neat themed collection of ghost stories. The Haunted Library, Classic Ghost Stories. Great cover. And this is selected by Tanya Kirk. Now, these are all stories that are related to either specifically libraries and or books. So we do have the, I'm sure the Tractate Monolith is in, the Tractate Midoth, sorry, by M.R. Janes is in here. That's the second one in here. And it's from the 20s, 30s, right up to 1963. So there are a few that I have, like the later ones that I've not read, so that'll be nice. And to continue, ghosty stories, that this one I want to read as well. Like this is definite. It's Sleep No More, Railway and Canal and Other Stories of Supernatural by L.T.C. Roltz. Introduction by Susan Hill. Now, we saw Roltz on one of my hours in my library, and he was a prolific sort of industrial age writer, trains, that kind of thing, just everything. And I found out in the course of that he wrote some ghost stories, so I had to get this. It's very short, and they're not all ghost stories, like I say, but I'm hoping to sample those. And then we could just continue on with ghost stories, because I have shelves of this. This is another part of the Weird Tales of the Weird, that we will see in a minute, of the British Library, a series of short stories. Not all, the majority of them seem to be edited by Mike Ashley, who I really like for science fiction. And this is Glimpses of the Unknown, Lost Ghost Stories. They're great. They're great covers, and the spines are really cool as well. The artwork is really good, and this is just like they're calling it Lost. So they're lesser known ghost stories. Some of them I've read, and some of them I haven't. So they're not all sort of lost. That's for sure. But that will be one that I could dip into. And then another one that goes along with the Rolt one is The Platform Edge, Uncanny Tales of Railways. It's British Library, Tales of the Weird again. And this is edited by Mike Ashley. Just look at those covers. They're just fantastic. And these are sort of ghost departures in the light, approaches in the dark, and return to the light. So they're the Platform Edge is a collection of the greatest stories of strange happenings on the tracks. So not all ghost stories, but it sounds like it's most of it. And this express service to the unknown, phantom passengers join the jostling of the daily commute. A subway car disappears into another dimension without a trace, while a tragic derailment on a lonely hillside in the Alps torments the locals with its horrifying nightly repetition. And then this sort of ends my ghost ones, I think. Yeah. for the Tales of the Weird. And this one is Spirits of the Season, Christmas Hauntings, edited by Tanya Kirk. Again, British Library Tales of the Weird. So I have lots for week one. I have lots to delve into for week one. So what did we say week two was? See, this is my memory is bad. Week two is Gothic Horror. Okay. Well, a few more things that are from this will go for folk horror as well. I think it's called Evil Roots, Killer Tales of the Botanical Gothic. Just look at that cover. It's just fabulous. So there's a possibility for stories from here, edited by Daisy Butcher. And yeah, and other Gothic ones I will be dipping back into Edgar Allan Poe. I've got it's a perfect reason to dip back into an annotated Edgar Allan Poe I have. It's not all of his stuff, sadly, but it's a selection. So I'll be dipping into that. And I've got some other Gothic books that I'll see if I can pull out, depending on how much time I have in that week. And then we've got folk horror. And the main one that I'm going to do from this is Weird Woods, Tales from the Haunted Force of Britain. Again, just beautiful. And it's a short one. It's 235 pages, so I should be able to do this one. And possibly, like I say, if there's more time, then I might be able to slip a few of these in that I think the botanical one, which should work. And with other ones here, I think there's Gothic stuff from A Phantom Lover and Other Dark Tales by Vernon Lee, edited by Mike Ashley. This is Vernon Lee was the nom de plume of Violet Paget, 1856 to 1935, British author and essayist, outspoken in her feminist and pacifist views and relationships with other women. She lived much of her life in Europe, immersed in artistic and literary traditions, which would influence her pioneering work in the aesthetic movement and her stunning original fiction. So this has some Gothic material in as well, and this is a nice collection of E.F. Benson, The Outcast and Other Dark Tales. And this actually has a short story that's never been published before, that they dug it out of the sort of in the depths of the British Library. So yeah, and then the last one, I don't have material out here, but I do have it, is Cosmic Horror. And I've been for a number of years wanting to revisit H.P. Lovecraft. Now, I've got the two large volumes that are the Leslie S. Klinger's annotated. There's 2 volumes annotated H.P. Lovecraft. So I figured this is a perfect excuse to dig into that. And that's what I'll be doing for Cosmic Horror. I'll be concentrating on H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu, or other ones that are Cosmic Horror that I can find. That I don't think these 2 volumes are the complete H.P. Lovecraft, so I'll have to figure out which ones that fit under his Cosmic Horror and read those. So yeah, so this is the announcement for Horror Mayhem, and there are about 14 or 15 of us booktubers that are co-hosting with the Bookish Bryants. If I didn't say that at the beginning, I should have, but it's head up by the Bookish Bryants, who brought us, again, New Worlds November and February Fantasy Stories, and there'll be more to come from them as well. So so if anybody has any questions, do sound out in the comments. I will put, or attempt to put, all the links to the co-hosts in the description, and I'll see you next time, BookTube.